Maybe think this morning.
Maybe you know that state would be hard to take down.
Yeah.
If it's short, you know,
That's fine.
that'd be right
I
up
just-
there after you.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they would have.
Yeah, no, they did. They can't come. They're out of the area. He's already gone on a flight trip. Yeah.
Last year, brother, yeah, that's all Trump would get learned. We'll offer them that money.
So that's fine, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Is corporate counsel coming at all today for anything?
I mentioned it to him. A lot of times what happens is he watches on TV and comes down at the
And
last second.
sees the urgency and, okay.
I did mention mention it to him yesterday,
Okay, okay,
whether or not he comes down.
okay, yep.
And again, like on this ordinance stuff, it's the hearing. We don't have to decide on it one way or another today. We
Right,
don't
yep,
comfortable.
right, yep. What, do we got 1 minute to go? We are live, okay.
That clock's on. That one's full.
That one's slow?
Yeah, 8:32.
Okay, according to my information, it is 8:30, even though that looks a little slow up there. So we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call of members. Dave Larson, Vice Chair, in charge of the meeting today.
Randy Severson, livestock producer member.
Riley Foltz. Tony Munson, Town Association rep.
Stacy Klein, District 2.
Thank you.
We'll say it, Stacy.
Yep. I heard her, I think. Yeah, yep. So Kellen Nelson missing today. Certification in the open meeting law requirements have been met. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda for the day.
So moved.
Motion by Riley, second by Tony. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. It says adoption. I'd call it approval of the minutes from the August 3rd meeting. Looking for a motion again.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Riley, second by Andy. Discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. At this point, on item number 6, close the public hearing. Call that to order. I guess it would be about 8:31. 2. That one up there says 1. Noting the time, we did. Secretary, would please read the public hearing notice.
There will be a public hearing. There will be a public hearing before the Trempealeau County Environment and Land Use Committee on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. in the county boardroom of the courthouse. 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin. Purpose is a land use change rezone from transitional ag to primary ag on approximately 49.91 acres, more or less, to accommodate a split of the acreage. The hearing is requested by Christopher and Christine Lockery Family Revocable Trust, landowner petition, Rochelle, Wisconsin. Trumpealeau County invites you to join this meeting as follows. To provide public comment on these hearings, please call 715-538-1770. Your attendance and comments are encouraged at this hearing. If you are unable to attend and have any questions, please call Verge Gamroth with the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1916 or email vergegamroth@Trumpealeau County, Wisconsin, US. If you are unable to attend and desire to submit a written comment, please send your written comment to the Department of Land Management, P.O. Box 67, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773, or email, once again, to Verge. Please know that written comments will be read at the public hearings up to 250 words. All written comments must include the name and address of its author and the request that the letter be read at a particular meeting date. Any special interest groups or expert witnesses will be allowed 20 minutes to give a presentation and must register at least 1 week prior to the meeting date by calling Verge at the Department of Land Management, 715-538-1916. Sincerely, Verge Gamroth.
Okay, at this point, Mike, did you have anything on this? Or Verge, whoever?
Okay, we have Alex Lazel here from Weiss Realty representing the Lockeries. And Alex, I don't know if you want to come to the table here, right up here. Okay, yes. The rezone is from Transag to primary ag, as the notice said, on 49.91 acres. Due to the small acreage, they need to rezone to a higher density of zoning. As the application says, they would like to split the land to sell the acreage in blue, which, you know, is the piece right here. You all received the information that I sent you. All adjoining landowners were notified, and I received no correspondence for or against the rezone. It was published in the Trumpealeau County Times on August 17th and August 24th. I did send a letter to the town clerk, but we do have a letter from the town. And if approved, this rezone would be contrary to the land use plan, as the land use plan calls for R20 zoning. And the R20 zoning would actually be a higher density than what we would be rezoning this to now. So R20 be 20 per 40, and this would only be 2 per 40.
Potential rezone is reducing the number of lots, houses that could be built on it. Is that?
Well, no, the potential rezone is adding one more lot, allowing
more,
for
okay,
another
one
house.
more.
But the land use plan would be R20, which would be
okay.
20 per 40.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's all I have for you, unless Alex has something you'd like to add.
I guess I don't have anything at this point. I mean, I just look at they own pretty much everything across the other side of the tracks, and they'd like to keep that stuff. But how the zoning is right now, they own probably like 171 acres, and they just, that one parcel to the south side of the tracks, it's all in transitional ag, and they just want to keep a piece just to have on that side of the tracks so they can cross to go over there. And that's what they're just looking to do.
Okay.
These are the parcels right here. And then they still have this land here, which fronts the road here. So they have all this yet.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone? Anyone else wishing to testify? Did we read off the phone number for anybody to call in on this?
Yes.
You did. Okay, I missed it. Anyone else to testify? And nobody has any registration sheets? Okay, please read the letter.
It was dated July 19th, 2022. regarding the Christopher Lockery rezone request. The Town of Arcadia Board of Supervisors was informed by Alex Lazo Realtor on behalf of Christopher Lockery that he is requesting a parcel of land on Middle Road to be rezoned from transitional ag to primary ag. The Town of Arcadia Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a motion at their July 11th, 2022 board meeting stating that they support this request. Sincerely, Lynn Axis, Town Clerk.
Thank you. At this point, if there's nothing else, I will close the public hearing at 8:37. 8:07. Well, I guess it takes a motion, doesn't it?
Make a motion to close.
I'll second it.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Any discussion by the committee? On this? Hearing none, call for a motion to approve. Motion by Todd, second by Foltz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Dave, I just want to mention that this will go to county board on September 26th.
Okay, yep.
And Alex, they're not requiring you to be present, but if we can have a phone number, which I think I have, to call you in case there's any questions on the county board floor at that time?
Yep.
Okay, all right. You're free to go if you want
Yeah,
to.
I'm gonna listen to the next one.
Okay. And then I do have the resolution that you'll need to sign
Okay, okay.
whenever you're ready.
Item number 7 is a public hearing. Please, Randy, would you read it?
Yes. Please take notice that pursuant to statute 59.69 2(3)E, Wisconsin statutes, the Trempealeau County Environment and Land Use Committee will hold a public hearing on the addition of section 3.033 to the Trempealeau County zoning ordinance relating to parcels created that do not have public road frontage only, due to its location behind current railroad right-of-way or state trails. Further be advised that this public hearing will be held on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 8:35 a.m. in the county boardroom of the courthouse located at 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773. Prior to the public hearing, copies of the complete proposed addition to the ordinance may be viewed or obtained at the offices of the Trempealeau County Department of Land Management and the Trempealeau County County Clerk at 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773. To request that a copy of this ordinance addition be mailed, please contact the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1916 or email at mikecorman@countytrempealeau.wisconsin.us. The zoning ordinance amendments may also be assessed and viewed online at www.countytrempealeau.wisconsin.us. Written comments will be accepted at the Environment and Land Use Committee until September 6, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. Comments can be emailed to Mike Corman at County Trempealeau, Wisconsin, U.S. or mailed to the Department of Land Management, P.O. Box 67, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773, but must be received no later than September 6, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. Trumpealeau County Environment and Land Use Committee, Kellen Nelson, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have the overview of this?
Well, I can give the overview. I just want to mention that all the towns were notified via email, and I received responses from all of them that they did receive the material, and it was published in the county papers,
Okay.
all the county papers.
Okay. Okay.
All right, this is the ordinance revision that's been discussed at the last several meetings. This is essentially to address those properties behind railroads that cannot obtain direct road frontage due to the railroad on one side and in particular in the river on the backside. So essentially there's no way for or properties to gain frontage. And essentially that without this change, no one would be able to do any kind of subdividing of lots of any size unless it was with an adjacent owner that had shared, an adjacent owner. So, for instance, if someone wanted to split a large section of land to a 60-acre parcel, they currently could not do that because they can't obtain road frontage. This would allow for that to happen as long as they provide an easement up to an existing railroad crossing. Of course, this doesn't force the railroad company to give in a license for a railroad crossing. It just gets them to a point, and then it would be the landowner's responsibility to get that railroad crossing. So we discussed this at the previous meetings. This is the language that we're bringing forward to kind of give that opportunity for landowners.
Okay. I guess there really isn't an applicant to this to see if anybody is here, so we can kind of move on to public testimony. Do we have anyone wishing to testify in regard to this issue?
Yes, we have two.
Okay.
Tom Shea has indicated he will appear and testify for information only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turn your mic on, please. Push the button. There you go.
I've got two questions. The first one is, with our parcel, we have probably about almost a mile of frontage in back of the railroad tracks. And there is actually, in between the creek and the wetlands, they're all separated and accessed by 3 different railroad crossings. So potentially, we would be able to divide that into 3 parcels?
I guess I'd like to see a map on that to make sure I'm seeing what you're saying there, but you would be able to subdivide them according to the density of the zoning, as long as you provided an easement, perpetual easement to a railroad crossing. So I'm guessing, do you know what the zoning on the property is?
It's all agricultural.
So it's not, we have primary, I'm thinking it's exclusive ag, so.
Yeah,
And I don't know
right.
how many acres do you have?
On that side of the tracks, there is probably about 100 acres.
So I think the net density on that, I believe, is 35, so 70. You might be able to get 2 in there, I believe, with exclusive ag. I think a third, I think you're coming up a little short on that 35. I believe.
Chair, could I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Would the land on that side join the land you donated to the park or are donating
Yes.
to the park?
The smallest parcel would be the one that joins with the park, yes.
Again, you can split land without access, provided it's being added to an adjacent property owner. Does that make sense? So you
Yeah, then the only adjacent property is the park, so Trempealeau County would.
Right, but that's not the only, with this change, you'd be able to split it, but I believe it would be 2, not 3.
Let's see, here's where the problem would be, is the one that's adjacent to the park would probably be only about 25 acres. And that would be the one small parcel. And there would be no other access to it because Lewis Valley Creek divides it on one side, and the park is on the other side. So basically, it's a separate parcel already. There's no other access to it other than across the railroad crossing right now, or from the park.
Does that have its own permitted crossing currently?
Yes.
So we got a couple instances here. We have the density at which lots can be split, and then you also have the crossing issue. If you were zoned primary ag, that's two homes per 40. So that gets essentially 20-acre lots. So if you had primary agriculture as zoning, that would allow you to get a third lot in there.
So you're saying that basically it'd have to be rezoned to do that?
To primary ag. And I'm assuming you have, again, I don't have the map in front of me, but I think you have exclusive ag zoning.
I believe so.
I believe so. So to get 3 lots out of there, I believe you would have to rezone it to primary agriculture.
Okay, second question. On our property, where the building site is, we actually have 2 houses that use a shared driveway. Now, one house basically is pretty much excluded right now on about an 1.5 acre parcel. Any way that could be parceled off separately?
We do net density-based zoning, so again, I don't know what the minimum lot size in there, but essentially your nets, if you had, let's say 60, again, it's difficult without having all the information for your particular situation. But I believe, so if you had 60 acres and you're in primary ag, you'd be able to do three splits on there. And as long as you met the minimum lot size and retained, didn't go more than 3 splits, you would be okay. But I can't, without having the code in front of me, what the minimum lot size is for the town you're in, I can't tell you if that's 1.5 or 2 acres. It's different for each town. Verge, do you know what it is?
I think it's a 1.5 miles out of town. I think it's 1, and then anything else I think is 2. I don't have that.
Yeah.
So if I understand you, if we had a minimum lot of, say, 2 acres, we could make 1 split on that, and then the rest of it would have to go with the other 2?
Well, Tom, I think we'd have to address it on your own individual situation.
Okay.
And we'd have to sit down with you and look at the zoning and the acreage and all that stuff.
Okay.
I mean, it's not just something we can answer here today. And the situation could change,
Okay.
And, I mean, is it a likelihood that you're going to split them up?
It's
Or
possible.
keep them all together?
Well, it's possible it could be split up, because I guess basically, and I guess Alex would even know that, if you're selling a farm and you got 2 houses on it, one house is going to be pretty invaluable, because most people buying a farm aren't going to want 2 houses. And the second house, basically right now, has its own sewer system, has its own electrical setup, has its own well. So basically, it's a separate entity already. but it's all owned under one ownership at this point.
I think it's pretty hard to answer that unless we sit down with you and see what you actually have proposed and how much acreage is going with each house and so forth.
Okay.
But it seems you have, there's options there to address your concerns.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
That's all I got.
All right, Ed Malczewski is to testify in favor.
I'm Ed Malczewski, and what I want to talk about is back in 1960, when my dad purchased the first farm, it was 176 acres. 2 years later, he purchased the second farm. It was 236. All this land I'm talking about is across the railroad tracks. In 2004, I purchased the farm. That farm was 175 acres. So now we got 3 farms, 1 big parcel. I want to sell all the land below the railroad tracks that belonged to the first farm that my dad purchased in 1960. We took the abstract and I had it surveyed, and that's what I'm here for. Before I was told I cannot separate parcels, well, we created a bigger parcel or created a bigger mess. So what my plans are is to sell all the land that belongs to the first farm. And I got the abstract and the legal description, and it's 56 acres. And I guess that's all I have to say. Got any questions?
I think we've been trying to attempt to resolve your issue in regard to the railroad. I believe this does that. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, the railroad was granted that land in 1873, and that's the problem. The county would either want me to sell it to one neighbor or the other neighbor. Well, the neighbor to the north has no access to get to that land, and furthermore, we don't want to sell that because those fields are larger and they're more convenient when harvesting and farming, where the land that I want to sell is more or less, it's good for duck hunting, deer hunting, stuff like that. 7 different fields on 29 acres, and with larger machinery, it's very inefficient to make money off of it, you know?
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments, want to testify?
Can you comment in pro for it? Like in favor?
You should fill it out.
Oh, I should have filled out.
Go ahead, fill it out.
Well, it's fairly simple.
Yep.
I'll fill it out. I run into this all the time.
Now, this land that I want to sell, is it important that I give them 100-foot frontage to a public road? Or would it be okay just to give them I think the county wants 120-foot right-of-way?
The draft ordinance says a 66-foot easement to the railroad crossing.
Okay. So all I have to do is just give them a 66-foot easement to the railroad crossing to get to the property.
Correct.
And I wouldn't have to give them 100-foot frontage to a public road.
No.
Because you can't. You can't.
Right? Because of the rail tracks.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to verify that before
Right.
we get too far into the process.
Ed, you did receive this copy of this, correct?
Did I get that copy?
You got this copy of this ordinance revision, right?
Yeah, in the mail.
Yep, yep. Okay.
All right, we have Alex Laso who wishes to testify in favor.
So actually, I run into this quite a bit. I do a lot of stuff south of Arcadia with the railroad. There's a lot of big properties on that. It would be on the north side of the railroad, and they're trapped between the Trempealeau River and that railroad. And a lot of these parcels are pushing like 150 to 200 acres. And the way this property values have been shooting up, I mean, for someone to come in and swing 200 acres just for hunting is pretty tough for a lot of people, and that's where I am pretty much in favor of it. I mean, I ran actually into this parcel that was up here where we were rezoning it. We actually ran into the same issue actually about a year and a half ago, where the one owner actually, we had someone that wanted to buy the bottoms, and there was a neighbor to the south that was interested in just a small piece. He could actually walk across, just wanted to cut wood and do stuff, and we couldn't, even though he was a neighbor across from it, he didn't touch it, but he was right there. We couldn't do anything like that. And it just made it, and the land was pretty much worthless to everybody else except him, but we couldn't even work with him. So I mean, we could have gave him access and stuff like that, but it just wasn't feasible. So as like an easement and stuff like that, I think it's a pretty unfavorable deal, because you can get pretty creative and be set and solid for people to get in there. I mean, I think that's a lot of money that people get, trapped there, that, they could push it out to someone and bring another hunter into the community, or someone just spend more money in the area, and that's where it's, 200 acres or 150 is just a lot of money to spend. Whereas you can drop them down to 40s and 50s, and it's pretty easy, and you can still keep them pretty clean, because there's still a lot of, you drive up and down them, there's a lot of crossings in a lot of areas that people just don't see, because they got to get to their fields, and there's still accesses. So, that's where I see it a lot of times. I've talked to a lot of people up and down them tracks, and I have to tell them right off the bat that you have to sell it as a whole, and they're like, and it's pretty tough to find a buyer for 200 acres plus.
Well, they can sell it to any adjoiner.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? A lot of your adjoiners, they're not gonna want, they just don't want that. 200 acres, they don't have any use. A lot of your people sometimes are just around here, they're hunters that come into the area. It's just like someone going and buying a cabin up north. People use this as a luxury just as much. It's just hunting, duck hunting, stuff like that just as much. So I guess that's where my point is it brings it valuable for some of these farmers to liquidate some cash and have value to go and purchase other investments just as much too.
You do
That's all.
realize that the purpose of this is that you, or the landowner, must retain an easement from the railroad or permitted access before you can sell it, or to protect the potential
So
buyer.
you have to give an easement for that new owner to get there, correct?
No,
Not for the railroad.
not for the railroad.
So you have to get an easement across the railroad.
Correct. That's
From the railroad company.
From the railroad.
from the railroad company.
They don't give them out. They don't give them out to nobody.
That's the problem. That's correct. That's a big issue.
And they cannot be transferred. You cannot
Correct,
give permission to someone else.
correct,
And the railroad can
Pull that.
stop that permit anytime it wants
correct.
for crossing.
Wow.
Which is something we have no control over.
Well, no, and I understand that. I just talking from the split standpoint and everything like
Correct,
that.
but the
yeah,
split basically, so yeah, this committee has designed this to put the burden of
Yeah.
proof on the seller and the buyer and the realtor versus us as a board.
no, but I understand that.
Okay.
And I just explain what you can't, like, they all want to split, and I tell them you can't split, So I understand both ways.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? I've lost count, but I believe that was my third call, but I'll call again. Anyone else wishing to testify? Did we have a letter from any? No, we didn't have any letters from the town on this issue this time.
No, but they were all notified.
Yep. At this point, I will close this public hearing at 9:02. And ask if there's a motion to approve this. Motion by Riley, second by Andy. Any other discussion at this point? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, this ordinance change will go to county board on September 26th, so I'll need your signature on the resolution also.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you. Okay, next. Next item on the agenda, permit application procedure with town signatures. And I guess you're up.
Yeah, Verge wrote a real nice memo on this. She has the bulk of the history and the background on this. But this, the way our application for building permits, that's to meet the Uniform Dwelling Code, and then permits for zoning permits, land use permits. We use the same application, and that one of the things we've required for years is a signature from the municipality, whether it be the town, city, or village. So their applicants are having to go to the town, city, or village, and then also get bring it to the county. Again, we provide Uniform Dwelling Code services for all the cities and villages in the county except for Blair and Arcadia. And then we do county zoning for all the towns, but not the cities and villages. So this policy, we received some complaints regarding it being too many steps and that kind of stuff, too many signatures, for an electrical upgrade to have to go to the town or the city and then back to the county again. But there's a long history on this, going back to 2008 in the way we communicate with our partners, towns, cities, and villages, and Verge can kind of recap that for us today. I mean, can you just talk a little bit about 2008 and why this policy, your memo, because you were here and you experienced firsthand the challenges that were in place at the time.
As I mentioned in my memo to you, that I was here about a year, and I had different chairmen calling me and saying, is there something being built here? What's going on? And then they would say, I have no knowledge of that. And then some towns would want signatures only on new homes. Some wanted on new homes and detached garages. And I'm like, I can't keep track of 15 townships. So then I went to the committee, or it was brought to the committee, and they made a motion to require the town signature on all permits. Today that may be a different story. I have no idea what each town clerk feels or town chairman feels. And, but it is easier than ever to get those signatures because of email. A lot of them have been doing that. And as I mentioned at the bottom, I think some of the objections have come from electricians are required to pull a permit now for any service upgrades. And, basically they just need to provide their license number and who's doing the work and so forth and pay the fee for the inspection. So, I guess, I don't know if we want a separate form for that. I guess I'd have to talk to Kyle what the UDC requirements are for a form. And I don't know how the towns feel about that, so.
I guess I'll bring it up here now, speaking for myself, not as any member of this committee. On the electrical upgrades, I think there needs to be some adjustments in there in regard to replacing a house service. Because right now, you need to get the permit, that's fine. Then you need to do the work and call the inspector before the power company will hook the power back up. And it gets to be a coordination problem sometimes. I don't, some way in here to allow for something different, like,
Days instead of.
well, what I mentioned Minnesota has a deal like that, that you get the permit, you do the work, the power company hooks up, the inspector inspects sometime in the next day or two, whenever it works out for his convenience. If you have a problem, he issues you a 5-day fix it. And if you don't fix it, the power company comes and pulls the power back on that, and that's not good business. But it seems to work. It's I'm throwing it out as a suggestion to make it more convenient to change out services, because that's something that has to be completed and powered up the same day. And I don't know where that fits in this discussion, but
I think it fits good. I just had a generator put at my house, and they had a schedule for the inspector to be there in so much time, which conflict of, they didn't have it done. So then the guy had to come back after a phone call 2, 3, 4 hours later, because it wasn't, nothing ever plans right. So I think, in my opinion, that might be a good way of looking at it.
Well, I think UDC rules are that they are supposed to give you 24 hours notice, and they have 48 hours to get there.
But you have to hook it up the same day, and the power company won't hook it up till they've got the signature from the inspector.
Well, I understand, but the inspector has all of Trempealeau County, and he has to go from Osseo to Trempealeau. So, I mean, they coordinated, I think, as best they can, and, some of what you're speaking to, Dave, is UDC requirements, and it's not our requirement. Our requirement is that we provide the permit for them. As far as UDC inspection, that's all state code, I believe, Mike, right?
Yeah, and I think, the issue, the complaint that we got was not about and I'm not saying that isn't a challenge.
Yep.
But the complaint was about applying for the permit and having to get the county to sign off on it, and then also the municipality going to 2 different jurisdictions. That was really the heart of the complaint there, is having to go to 2 different jurisdictions to make that happen. I didn't remember that the complaint was about this kind of stuff, and that would be outside the realm of what the county or a town or a city or village government, because that uniform dwelling code, it was adopted at the state. Not that we can't try to do that better, but this is really more about, the complaint came across and more about the application process.
Yeah.
And how many signatures do we have to get?
Yeah.
That was the complaint.
Before I go on the same, I'd have to go back and look up again whether the state says that inspection has to be done before the power's hooked up, or the inspection has to be done and a report issued. If it's open without a specific timeline, we could work within that.
We can check with Kyle on that for the next meeting.
Yes.
Kyle and I actually had a conversation about the similar situation that's going on right now. The biggest issue with it being turned on is once everything's turned on, the power company locks him out and he can't do this inspection. That's the problem that he's running into, because he had one just happen the other day where they actually just locked him out, and then he has to just put a note in there, unable to complete an inspection as locked out.
Everything's getting harder. I used to have a whole drawer full of seals and had no problem. As long as you worked with them, cut the seal, look at it, reseal it, tell the guy the next time you saw him, but that don't work anymore. But just along that same line, I won't get too specific, but 2 years ago, I had an issue with 2 power companies right across the road from each other. First one, I said, what do we have to do here? I won't use the explicit language he did, but basically he said, don't worry about a permit, don't worry about inspection, tell me when you're done and I'll hook it up. within the next week, across the road with another power company, we had to go through the whole process. So,
I guess what we need today from committee is if you want us to change our permit application process, which isn't about hookups.
Right, yep.
It's just
That's
about
a different
an
problem.
additional
Yep.
signature. If you want us to look into how to do that and how to communicate with the towns and villages and cities, we can kind of come up with some other options. But if you're good with the status quo, we're good with the status quo.
Riley?
Why do we have to have two signatures? If they gotta go to the town board, shouldn't they have the ability to say yea or nay at that point because it's in their jurisdiction? Granted, yes, we are oversight, but
We do not collect the permits. The county, under a comprehensive plan, is uniform dwelling code through the county, so that's why you get your signature through the town for a permit, and then it all goes down here, because they collect, they dictate.
And the cities, villages, and towns have agreed to have the county execute the uniform dwelling code on their behalf.
Because
So-
theoretically, then you'd have to have the chairman and the clerk present at the same time, because then the clerk would have to do the writing and collect fees and this or that, where here, it's all done here.
And what Verge, yeah, and what Verge was talking about is that in 2008, from the municipalities out there, they wanted to know what was going on. So the fix on that was to say, all right, have someone from the town, city, or village sign it. That way they can't say they didn't know about it. That was the fix in 2008, and that's why we have two signatures. It's a town, city, village acknowledgement. It's not an approval. It's the way of sharing, communicating information about what types of development are going on in their jurisdiction.
So on electrical change, does the town really need to know that? Then nobody's gonna be looking saying, oh, who's up there working on that back?
In 2008, that's what they wanted.
Right. I'm just wondering, at this point, I mean, if you see a building going up, yeah, they're gonna wanna know. But if they see somebody working on electrical at a house, do they really need to know? I guess that's where I'm at with it.
Go ahead, Verge.
The other thing I wanted to say to answer Riley's question, our form is a dual-purpose form. There's a land use, which is zoning, and there's also the UDC, which is building, construction, or inspection. So in the townships, the county has zoning authority. So, and then, like Tony said, the UDC designation has been given to us. So the towns really have, I don't want to say it, but they don't have zoning authority, but they're just signing off that that they know that something is going on. So they don't drive down the road and say, hey, who's building that new house? Yeah.
Everybody to understand that this is how we do it. This is the reason why.
Are we getting an excessive amount of complaints?
I wouldn't say an excessive amount of complaints, but it was, there was a complaint with some passion on there, and this is a policy that was developed 14 years ago, and it's an opportunity, this is an opportunity to review it and see if it makes sense for 2022 and beyond. And I think, Verge's comments with email, it does make it easier to do that step.
I understand with everybody's busy schedule today that, yes, just an electrical upgrade or whatever seems to be minor or whatever, but it's just the safety steps that we've put in place because, yes, at the town level, here at the county, it justifies one person's job with all the townships collectively working together. And that way then your assessors can come down and get all filings, records, so that they can do their annual inspections and assessments. So.
It makes sense.
I would be inclined to leave it as is.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to, and Okay. To leave the policy as it stands in regard to permits. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Conservation aids grant project / discussion possible action.
That would be mine.
Okay.
So at your desks were plat maps that I put down, and there should be 2 of them. So the Conservation Aids Program, we found the best way to pick projects, the most neutral way to pick projects is to bring them to front of the committee and let you guys decide if there is more than one. This year there's more than one. We have 2 to look at. Both very good projects. Either one you decide to go with would be great to put in. The one that doesn't get picked could always be put on for next year as well. So the first one I'll talk about is the elk rod and gun. So you'll see on that plat, it's the one where it's located by the Richard Fila property. So this one is going to be in Elk Creek, and what they would like to do is install 4 rock weirs and 4 root wads, and the purpose is to try to improve the fish habitat in that area. We've worked a lot with Rob Herman and with other partners from Elk Rod and Gun Club, and they've done excellent work with doing these fish habitats. The biggest purpose of the Conservation Aids Grant is to make sure it's all done on public property or property that has an easement for public use. And it usually has to have some sort of ability to have youth education. Of course, providing fishing and falls within those categories. So this project is an excellent option. What he's asking for the part of his grant would be the heavy riprap and delivery to site, excavator to set the rock, and then there's some seed and mulch that was donated, but it would be more or less to put it down. So he's estimating the project at about $6,850. The grant itself that Trempealeau County gets is a base minimum of $1,971. So that's what we're guaranteed to get. It's a 50-50 match grant. So at that base minimum, the project could cost $3,942. We can always ask for more. So at the most, what I could get him would be $3,942, him paying half, us paying half. Otherwise, we can try to see if we can get the $6,850. We have gotten it in the past. A lot of counties don't use this Conservation Aids Grant, so there is an option to at least partially fund this or fully fund it depending on what the state approves. So there's that one. Does anybody have questions on this one?
So just to be clear, the elk rod and gun is the applicant?
Yep.
And there's an easement that they would use to allow public fishing after this is done?
Yes.
But the landowner, there's no ownership change?
Nope. No ownership change. The easement, it's a perpetual easement that is in place for it. And then, yeah, there's nothing changing with the ownership, and it has to maintain that perpetual easement in order to have the grant funds. And if something were to fall through, they would have to pay those grant funds back.
Is there, you talked about easy public access, what, it doesn't look like it's...
Well, it would have to be public access to the property itself.
Okay.
So that would include multiple landowners, right?
It would go off of,
Yeah, like a driveway, but,
because you can see the Elk Creek comes through. I'm trying to figure out, I'm not very good at reading plat maps, so I will apologize. I would think it would have to come off of Andrew Dano's property down the plat line.
There's a gravel road there.
Yeah. But it is required to have an easement to go back there. They cannot do it unless there is a perpetual easement in place, and the DNR does verify.
so that private driveway would need that easement
Yep.
too?
It has to be in
Well,
perpetuity. It has to
It
be.
doesn't, there's no named road. Yeah.
The other thing that he was looking at too was a lot of this rock weirs and the root wads would also help with the sediment that's entering Bugle Lake. So he's also hoping that when they put all this stuff in place, that this is going to help cut down on that as well. So that is this first application. The second application is completely different. This is done by the Drum Rod and Gun Club, Strom Rod and Gun Club hasn't really ever applied before. So we usually kind of go back and forth between Elk Rod and Gun Club, Extra Rod and Gun. So this one is new. And this one is for community trails. So what they're doing here is they've created these community trails over by the Strum area. If you look at the map, it is north of the village of Strum, north of Crystal Lake. Highway 10, yep. And that's huge section back up there. It's mostly right now, the first half of the section on this side is what they're looking at, but eventually the trails will travel throughout the whole section. But what they're looking to do on this part of it is mowing, brushing, seeding, invasive species removal, signposts, and I think that's all that they're asking for, and some seeding. So their grant is actually a little bit lower. So what they're hoping for is $1,166. So it wouldn't even be the full grant amount, which is fine. We don't have to apply for the full amount. So this one would actually be a lot less, but still a good opportunity. It looks like they see that they're trying to get some interpretive trails going in there. They're hoping that a lot of the schools in the area will start using it for youth education. And they've also seen a lot of evidence of woodland animals using the trails, and they're hoping to create a storybook walk eventually on that property. And the Conservation Aids grant does do all of that as well. So it is actually a really wide range grant. It has a lot of opportunity for it. It's just a small amount that we get for the county.
So I understand Strum pays for half and this grant pays for the other half.
Yep.
How far back can you go? Because I know they started this last year, so I assume they gotta complete it before you get reimbursed?
It can only be for what's done in the grant year. So whatever they've done in the past cannot be touched. Nope. It has to be, expenses done for this next year. So these projects, whichever one we choose, are due to the state by October 1st. So I'll submit them over there, and the state pretty much just approves them right then and there. And then the next year, January, is when they can start. So anything starting January 23 through December of 23 is all eligible for expenses. And I actually had a long conversation with him on the phone about this, making sure he understood that it could not go with anything in the past. And yep, Prudlick.
Can I ask, when you said him, who were you having the conversation with?
Prudlick.
Prudlick,
Yep.
okay, okay.
With the Strum community, or Strum Rod and Gun.
Yep.
Looks like right now they're working on 3 miles of hiking trails at this point. I know Haley, I think, have you been on those trails at all?
I have, yeah. I live up in that area and I have used them. I remember when they first put them in and I went snowshoeing up there. I took the dogs a couple times. And I think I was just there probably about a month ago, and they are starting to expand a little bit more. So it is nice to have something close that we can go and walk on, as there's, just something there to do.
I don't know, I like the idea of anybody and everybody can go on a trail. I mean, I like that. I mean, I understand fishing, there's certain people that don't like to fish, but this way, if you look at it as good things for schools and stuff.
I will say
I kinda
that
like that
eventually
idea.
they're hoping that these trails will be used as cross-country trails as well for the school when they get them big enough.
Any more questions or discussion on these?
You're looking for a motion for one of the projects.
Yep, I would need a motion for one of the projects, and what I would like to do after that would be, I created 2 different resolutions depending on which one you sign, or picked, and then we just sign the resolution for it.
I'll agree with Mr. Todd on making a motion to support the Village of Strum's expansion.
Okay, we have a motion by Munson, second by Todd. Any other discussion? Riley?
With the Elk Run, the Elk Creek, That one would be nice too, because it does, right now, the lake is gonna have to be dredged. It shouldn't have been, we shouldn't have to be dredging it due to the fact that a few years ago, there was a blowout, so it wrecked all the work that was done. It shouldn't have been wrecked, but we had severe.
When the dam went out?
Yeah, when the dam went out and this, that flooding happened. It filled it all in. So this would help prevent that somewhat for further down the road. This would help prevent it. But I do agree with the gentleman here as well, is that the one in Strum would be probably better suitable for this year. Nothing against my area, but
Is there a way, Becky, that we could approve both and just basically making a second on the FILA project, that if you would get extra money or apply for extra funds, that this could possibly be done also, or is that a no?
It would be 2 grants going through, and they're looking just to approve the one. But I will say, though, if that dredging part is an issue, wherever that mouth of the entrance into Bugle Lake is, we should probably be looking at maybe even another conservation aids grant next year, because dredging can also be covered by that as well. So if you've got other partners involved, plus a conservation aids grant, that could be another opportunity.
yeah, we've been talking about dredging the lake for the last 2 years, so we're having an issue trying to put the sand somewhere. But I could bring it up at the next meeting, or call the mayor over there to talk about it and see what he wants to do.
Now, can they, the village of Strum, if it does decide to go that direction, can they revise it and say we're gonna do a little more to get all the funds?
Mhm.
Can we pass that on to them and say, hey, look, this is what you can apply for. If you can do a little more this year, why not take it?
And I can definitely talk to him about that too. Is it J.R. Prudlick? Is that what it is?
Yeah, Junior, they call him.
Okay, Junior. So I could talk to Junior about that too. I can actually give him a call if you guys decide to go with that one right after the meeting, and just let them know what's going on, that they got it for next year if they do get it, and then that they actually can add more to it.
Do a little more work.
They can go even higher, and I know that this is his first time applying, so he wasn't really sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, they can definitely ask for more.
Yeah. Get a little bit further, so they're not have to ask again in a couple of years, you know what I'm saying?
And if it's a continuing project, they could ask again if they decided they wanted to.
Right.
But that work has to be done within 1 year.
Yeah, the stuff that we'll pay for has to be done within 1 year, so the mowing the trails, the brushing, the signposts, the grass seeding, and the blade work and chipping and hauling, that kind of stuff would all have to be approved and done this year.
So that might be what they thought they could get done in a year.
Yep. Not this year, sorry, the year, but yeah. I guess it depends on volunteer work too.
Yeah, they have all summer next year too.
We've done a lot of fish habitats the last few years. The one that was different prior to that would have been when we got the targets for Ettrick. But, so it is a nice change of pace to have something different. But, I mean, either project is still excellent choice, so.
So see if I've got this, I understand this. The village of Strum one, they're talking 1,900, and so they're actually grant money of just shy of $1,000, because they have to come up with the other half. Is that?
So if they said 11, so I could either apply for the $3,942. I can just double it, apply for that, and they can try to double their project, or I can just apply for the 1,971.
Okay.
Or I could try to apply for more.
Okay, well, I suggest you talk to them and try to see if they can figure out a way to
Yep.
use more money.
I agree. I totally agree. Make it better, right up front.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Tony?
would there be any other grants that could help Bugle Lake in their dredge project that would possibly be eligible?
How about you two?
What I would recommend is that someone from the City of Independence attend the Mill Pond Summit up at UW River Falls on September 26th. It's a full day education program provided by UW Extension, and it's supposed to really help. There'll be other people from communities like Independence have mill ponds, and this program has been set up exclusively for this type of situation, and they'll get into grant sources and that kind of stuff. So that's September 26th at UW River Falls.
Okay.
So it could be anybody from your village staff, whatever. Charmaine will be there, but there may be some other people going as well from other cities in the county.
Would that
Go ahead.
cover like LG problems or whatever too? They're gonna discuss some of that issues there with some of these smaller ponds in this?
Perhaps I don't have the agenda right in front of me, so I don't remember. Maybe Haley does.
I don't have it in front of me, but I know that it was a full day. They're going to be bringing in people from DNR pertaining to, grant opportunities, dredging, sedimentation, and I believe it might also have covered other issues pertaining to impoundments, which could be that algae, because I know that is a large issue for most impoundments throughout the state, not just our region. So yes, it is I was looking at the agenda just earlier, and it looks like a great day. So I would really highly suggest anybody, to register for that, and I can always send out that link, so.
Just to throw into the mix a little bit, this is not to be confused with the new nonprofit that is starting to maintain the state trail in the area up there. Have they been to you, Tony, asking for anything? Okay.
In fact, I was referred to them, I referred them back down to here, I referred them back.
Yeah. Is Town of Albion authorized using some diesel fuel in the mower to help them out with some of the stuff, of the overhanging stuff? Just to make sure that two separate items, totally.
So I guess if we're leaning towards the Strum one, I just gave Randy the resolution for it, and he can read it before you guys decide.
Whereas the legislature of the state of Wisconsin enacted legislation providing for allocation to respective counties on an acreage basis for the county fish and game projects on the condition that there is local match for the state allocation. And whereas Trempealeau County desires to participate in county fish and game projects pursuant to provisions of Section 23.0912 of the Wisconsin statutes, and whereas the funds may be made available by the state for this project year are not likely to exceed $7,000, and a local private source has made commitment to provide the required local match for the state funds. Now it be resolved that Trumpealeau County Board of Supervisors does hereby accept the local matching funds and state funding for the project, and work on the project shall proceed based on the availability of such funds. Now be it resolved that the Environment and Land Use Committee is authorized to expend the funds hereby accepted for mowing, brushing, seeding, invasive species removal, and sign posting at the Strum Community Trails. For this project year, the location is north of the village of Strum, located in Section 17, Town 24 North, Range 8 West.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the one for Strum. Any more discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
These are the resolutions. We can do those. We just have to get them done.
Oh, okay, okay. Sign above my name. Okay. Item 12, County Conservation's Operations Report, discussion, possible action. Oh, I'm sorry. Drew my line in the wrong place. Grant Programs Review, sorry.
The ladies probably would have.
You can read about it. See you guys. Stacy, I just want to make sure that you got my email I sent over this morning with all the information in it.
Let me double check. Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to make sure you had copies of everything too. All right, so what you guys see in front of you is a brief description of all of the grants that we are offering right now. Some are not really grants per se, some are already like funding pools that we have. But I just wanted to make sure you guys understood what the department does for our funding sources. The first one on here is LWRM or SWRM. It's the exact same grant, just referred to by different names, Land and Water Resource Management or Soil and Water Resource Management. The main funding source for this one is DATCAP, which is Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. It is a cost share reimbursement grant. So this one has a couple different options. We can either do a 70-30 cost share, or if we choose to, we can allow for, what is the word I'm looking for? Economic hardship, where they can do a 90-10. That is the county's discretion to decide that. There are two types of funding with this grant, bond and SEG. There is a third one that doesn't really pertain to outside sources, but there is a staffing grant portion in here, which will fund a position and a half currently. But for the main purpose of this conversation, the bond and SEG funds, bond funds are our hard practices. They're those practices that we install on the ground. And I gave a bunch of examples in here. The main practices we've done over the years have been stream bank protection, the critical area stabilization, barnyard runoff, diversions, waterway systems, stream crossings, rockline waterways, grass waterways, waste storage facilities, and cattle lanes, which are completely different than our soft practices. So the soft practices are more nutrient management based, and those are where we can get a brand new nutrient management plan on the ground, so one that hasn't been created yet for those acres, or we've now been able to do cover crops and field buffers. So that's kind of a new area we're stepping into the last year and a half. So we're kind of excited about that, trying to help push the nutrient management on Trempealeau County. In the past, we have focused more on bond funds because it is easier to put those hard practices and get people to approve them. Now we're trying to educate the county more on the nutrient management side of things and try to get those soft practices going, which is really exciting for our department. Any questions specifically on land and water? It's one of our main funding sources. We do a lot with this grant. It changes every year for how much we get. So I believe last year was like, oh gosh, all my numbers are running in my head. Was it 70,000? Okay.
Yeah.
70,000 last year for bond, and we choose how much we're going to accept for SEG. And I'm pretty sure I put down 30,000 for SEG last year, or was it 20?
I think it was 20.
Okay, this year's test 30.
Correct.
So 20,000 for SEG, and the reason we didn't go as much for SEG is because we're still getting into it. We are not completely versed in it. We're still learning about it, trying to get more than just nutrient management plans. So we eventually hope to have that number higher. Guys good with that one? Okay. So the next major grant that the department handles is the TRIM grant. It's called Target Runoff Management. The DNR is the funding source for this one. Same type of cost share reimbursements where we can do 70-30 or 90-10. And there's two different forms of this grant. We can either do a large scale or we can do a small scale. The large scale is where we do multiple projects in a single watershed. So last year we've closed out actually the end of this year, we're closing out Pigeon Creek and Bruce Valley. So those two areas, we've had two large grants out where we can grab different landowners and try to do projects that are agricultural based in those watersheds to try to reduce, let's say, phosphorus. And then that one has a 3-year time frame on it. We can apply for an additional extension for a year, and we have tend to do that in the past, extended out to 4 years, trying to spend the majority of that money. It is sometimes hard when you do a large-scale grant to spend the whole thing. This past few years, our biggest issue, our biggest hurdle was COVID. a lot of times farmers weren't sure what was going to happen. So they weren't really keen on jumping on board to do a project because they weren't sure where their money was going to be coming from. So we did turn back a lot of money, or we will be turning back a lot of money off the last grant. So that is unfortunate, but when it comes to the pandemic, I mean, our hands are pretty tied. We can only do so much. So examples of that, stream bank protection, crossings. The biggest thing too is with TRIM, you can do barnyard runoff control systems. We can do underground outlets, access roads, heavy use areas, roofs. I mean, roof structures have been big with this, waste transfer systems, and of course, nutrient management. Same examples for small scale. It's just that this is done to a single landowner. And the max you can get for a small scale is $225,000, whereas a large scale could be up to $600,000. This one has a 2-year time frame, whereas the other one had a 3, with an additional 1 year we can apply for. But mostly it can be used for best management practices. Any questions on our TRIM?
So on this grant, is it still the homeowner covers the 10 or 30%, and then the grant covers the rest? So nothing to do with Trempealeau County pulling
Right.
money from there?
Right, the best part is that this is a non-levy grant. This one is completely done through the state. The county does not have any ties. We are simply the checkbook until the reimbursement comes through.
Perfect.
So the next one is nutrient management farmer education. And this one is the one that Rick mostly handles, and I am excited to say that we are getting more and more involved in this one, and as we should, because nutrient management is very important for the county to reduce the phosphorus in the water. This one is funded by DATCAP. It is, again, a cost share reimbursement grant. I do have on here 70-30 or 90-10. I need to cross that off because it is not 70-30, 90-10. It is just simply a payout reimbursement grant. So there's 2 types of funding that we can do with nutrient management. There's Tier 1 funding and Tier 2. Tier 1 funding is mostly trying to get people to develop nutrient management plans. We want a nutrient management plan on the acres, whether it's a full nutrient management plan or whether you're doing an update to a nutrient management plan. This grant can help fund the person attending the class to do that grant, or to do that plan. The other thing they can do is soil testing, which is key to do a plan. And then trainings as well for staff, and also doing farmer training too to explain different options with this. There is also another part of this where we can get an additional $2,000 to get laptops. And laptops would be great for, like, if we're doing classes, multiple people can be there and doing their programs. Or our people can go out in the field with a laptop and try to help a farmer out at their location. The other portion of the funding is Tier 2, and that one is mostly just educating. So you're not required to have a 590 plan, which is a nutrient management plan, but it does help with administrative training and support costs. So we could host an event that brings people in to speak to farmers or landowners about nutrient management. And then I did include an about section at the bottom, which explains what nutrient management is, and how it helps the farmers. The biggest thing that people need to remember is it will reduce the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and it also helps them to get better crops. I mean, I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly. Maybe Rick should have been down here for that part of it, but it does improve the crop yields. So based on how they've determined when you can do the addition of these.
So nutrient management, kind of a plug here, is that it helps the farmer spend less on, say, a commercial fertilizer, because they're going to be showing that, okay, this amount of manure that I'm using is actually only needed in this area of my fields, because per my soil tests, all of these nutrients are already here. So to actually have a better nutrient management plan is really helpful for the farmer or producer in cutting their costs and making sure that they're applying the correct amount of nutrients on their fields for their crops, crop yields, and having them not spend as much money on fertilizer they don't need. So really it is a win-win for everybody. It also helps with reducing the pollutants in the water systems and all of that. So again, win-win for Trempealeau County and also the farmer and producers. So it's a really great program, and we're really excited to get further into it.
What she said.
thousand dollars, I assume it reimbursed all of this.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that exciting?
And how do these farmers know about this program? I mean, their responsibility too, but how do we get it out to them?
Well, that's actually a good question. So I know that with our DLM Facebook page, we can put stuff out that way, so social media. We can try to do flyers and trainings and word of mouth, obviously. I know that Rick works very hard to check out different areas that don't have plans. So that's another option. A lot of it is farmers coming in and asking questions too.
Yeah, and I know that when we're doing like farm visits or anyone that originally has a nutrient management plan, we are doing checks and making sure that they understand and answering any questions they may have. So we are getting out in the field, really talking to everybody. And so that's really starting to spread, that the county is getting out and making farm checks and doing O&M inspections. And we talk about what's all going on their property and what they can do to improve it, including nutrient management. So the real big part is word of mouth, and we partner with Western Technical College in Independence, and a lot of producers know Brad Sirianni, and that also spreads word too. So a lot of it is word of mouth, and putting in the time to really get out there and chat. So we're getting out there. We're trying to get better with that. I know that with COVID and everything, it had decreased on that end of it because we couldn't get out and visit everybody. And with the all new staff, we're trying here. So we're trying.
I know that, so in the history of this grant, and I've been here, it'll be 7 years. In the 7 years that I've been here, we have not spent this entire grant. And it's always been disheartening for me to have to turn this money back because it is something that I think the county really needs to focus on. And right now we are, with Rick really taking the lead on this, I think that this next year will be a year where we'll spend the whole thing.
It also helps farmers meet requirements for other programs they might be interested in.
Exactly. So with a lot of other programs that require, or you're going to be working on nutrient management, a nutrient management plan is a prerequisite. You can't even get the grant without it. And I will say too that it's not just farmers that have to have the nutrient management plan. If you're a landowner and you're renting out your farm, your property for cropping, either you should have one or you should require the person renting to have one. I mean, it's a good responsibility to have that on your property.
Also, Mr. Todd, to answer your question, if you are, say, going to build a poultry barn, that is required. The 590 plan is required. That goes along with the permit, that you apply correctly. And so any farmer who makes new building improvements or whatever, part of it is mandated, yes. That way.
Correct. Any kind of manure storage or anything like that, there are requirements to have a nutrient management plan. So we get new nutrient management plans that way too, when someone, expands or increases yields or just wants to get into the business, so.
Any questions on nutrient management before we move on? Nope. Okay. So the next one is actually my favorite grant. It's the county cost share grant. This one is a non-lapsing grant, but it does have county levy. So this one you guys approve on every year when we do budget, we ask for $80,000. The best part about it is that $80,000 stays in the account. Whatever we don't spend will roll over into the next year with the addition of $80,000 hopefully approved the following year. So what that does is it helps us to maybe build the account a little bit if we need to do bigger projects. But I know that we've worked very hard to try to spend a lot of this down to make sure that we're not just piling money into an account. But this one is a cost share reimbursement. We do have it approved via resolution for 70/30 cost share. The whole purpose of this is high impact, low cost projects. The grant, I just want to give you a brief background on it. It ran from 73 to 76, and then it took a break, and then it ran in 96 again, and then again, it took a break again, and then from 2019 to present is when it's really taken off. We've got it up to the 80,000 that we've been asking for, which has worked really well. And I've done some more examples in here. The best part about this grant is it's kind of whatever we want it to be. So not only can we do sediment control structures and grass waterways and some stream bank work, but now we've gotten it to herbaceous invasive plants treatments, can't even talk today, woody invasive plant treatments, forest stand improvements, wildlife habitat restoration. So we're kind of molding this grant to really work for the department and the conservation staff. We've had a lot of odd requests for different types of grants or funding sources that our land and water and our SEG does not able to help because they're more agricultural based. This one doesn't have to be agricultural based. So this one is really great for the department just on a conservation level. But I mean, it's our choice as to how much we want to sign each person up for. So if same thing we do with the other projects, they all get bid out and then approved and go from there. Any questions on that one?
This one is capped at 80,000.
Yep, it's capped at 80,000 for the year, for the grant period, but it rolls over, so there is more than 80,000 in there. Just depends on how much we roll over each year.
There is no cap per individual applicant then?
It depends on the project. We don't want to spend like $40,000 out of this grant on an individual because it is supposed to be high impact, low cost. But if there was something that really needed to be done, we could if we needed to. But it is always approved and gone over by the entire conservation staff before a project is chosen, so.
How much is currently in there?
I have to double check after what we've spent from this year. Carryover, I think we carried over 50,000 last year. So was like 130 or something like that in there when we started the year. But I know we've spent a lot of that down, so.
I think we discussed about a month ago that we had allocated about 80,000 in 2022, I believe.
Yeah, I think we're into the reserve funds now.
So we're it's not all spent, but it's been allocated for projects that are in progress or in, so I think, and we're starting to work into those reserves.
And we'll see some more project requests when flooding season hits.
Oh, sure, okay. Yeah, that helps, because I do remember talking about it, I just can't remember the numbers.
Same way you can do for all the rest of the grants, just come in and talk to us. And if it's something we can handle with our land and water or our trim, we'll do it that way. Otherwise, if it's something that can't go through them, or maybe it needs to piggyback with another one, we can go the other way and choose it for that. Okay, the next one is conservation aids. So that's the one that you guys just approved today. So the DNR is the funding source for the conservation aids. It's a 50-50 match. It is a reimbursement program, so we will reimburse them the amount that they've spent, but we want them to do is spend the whole amount, and then we'll reimburse them for the half that they didn't need to spend. So that's how the project works. It was originally created just for the fish and wildlife, but it has gone into more of a conservation base. So not only does it work with just fish and wildlife, but it will also do the prairie restorations, the dredging. My favorite though is the boat launches and docks. We've had a couple of those go through. We've used it for the boardwalks at the park. I know that, and of course, the best part too is it'll also help the rod and gun clubs. So if they have something that they need to like update, or if they need to they want to create a new area, or they want to create a new program, this can help with that as well. A lot of people don't realize that this is out there. And I know I've been really pushing, I've been contacting each rod and gun, trying to push them to look at this further and hopefully help with funding sources, because I know rod and guns don't have that tons of money. They mostly rely on volunteer help. So if we can try to get like more archery ranges, and which kind of brings in the next level of hunters, trap shooting, anything in that sense. But I mean, it will also do wildlife restocking. And there's the best part about this grant too is if there's a weird program or weird, something that's not listed in here, that's just not typical, but it is a conservation project. If someone brings it to me, I can talk to the state and then they can say, you know what, yeah, we'll put it underneath there. They're actually really good about that. So, because targets weren't on here before. And so I asked, and all of a sudden we were able to get, like, I think, 14 targets for Ettrick.
But this is only limited to one entity per year, correct?
Mm-hmm, yep. We have the 1971 minimum per year, that's it. And then it is based off of the population of the county. So we're kind of stuck that way unless we're gonna have a population boom. But the best part is we can always ask for additional funding. And I have always gotten additional funding. I don't know how much I'm gonna get. One year I got $5,000, so I mean, that was excellent, but there's been years where I've gotten maybe $50 extra. It just depends on what other counties are doing in the state. So if a county isn't gonna use their grant, then they'll turn the money back in. So after October 1st, that goes into a pool and gets divvied out amongst the counties that are using the grant. The next section, I'm actually going to have Haley take over and talk about because they are not grants that I usually work directly with. So I know that she has a better mind source on that kind of thing.
Okay, so the next one is going to be water quality trading, and this one isn't a grant at all. This is for the WPDS point source discharger, which is a Wisconsin DNR permitting for like wastewater treatment plants, really anyone that's discharging. So they have to go through DNR to get a permit. Then they can opt into the water quality trading program because they do not meet the phosphorus effluent limits that they are required to meet. So with water quality trading, it is based on credits. It gets confusing because there's two programs that are very similar. But this one is the credits. We're gonna go with credits. And so it's based off a formula of however much phosphorus you're discharging into the water systems over the legal limit that equates to so many credits that you need. And then those credits come from projects that those municipalities or dischargers then install throughout that watershed. So we did have a couple projects within Trempealeau County that did use this water quality trading program. One of the big ones that a lot of people see is going to be the Myers Valley over by the Sukla property, south of Arcadia there. And that was for the city of Arcadia's wastewater treatment plant. So they did X number of feet of stream bank protection, and then that was modeled to show that they are reducing phosphorus because they're limiting the amount of soil going into the stream, which then in turns not having as much phosphorus going into the stream as they did soil samples, and then it's all modeled, and then that is then equated to those credits that they needed to get. Galesville also has been using this. I believe Strum has. They did a lot of the riprap around their impoundment up there, and I think a couple upstream on the Buffalo River. So there are multiple municipalities that do use it throughout the county. We do not fund any of this. We don't really have any kind of money tied up into this. They do ask us to help implement the project as far as oversight, unless they have a hired private engineer, which then they can also do the oversight. Sometimes how the current ones are set up is that the county sends out letters reminding them to do their annual inspection on their property, and that we just kind of oversee that project. So that's how our involvement is currently with those water quality trading projects. And this is all funded from the point source, paid directly for that project. So the landowner doesn't pay anything, the point source pays for the whole project. Then we're gonna jump down, well, I guess, examples are the stream bank protection, repairing buffers, embankments, manure storage. Really the ones we've seen in our county are the stream bank and shoreline protection ones. Then we're gonna jump into the multi-discharger variants. It is very similar to water quality trading. There are just some other nuances that it's a variance program, again, to the discharge limits. Same with their WPDS. So this is another option for that point source, either to go to water quality trading or MDV, which is what I abbreviate it as, or they can upgrade their plant to meet those phosphorus limits. So with the MDV program, they are getting a variance to their permit for meeting that discharge limit for phosphorus. And then they need to, in a certain time frame, I believe it's 5 years, if I remember correctly, is that they need to decrease the effluent phosphorus that is coming out of there to meet the limit, and also install a practice for reducing phosphorus in the watershed. And generally, they have multiple options, but what most of the municipalities or dischargers do is they pay the flat rate of $50 per pound of phosphorus over the limit to the county. So we can get funding from point sources that have elected into the MDV program throughout the whole watershed, which includes stuff in Jackson County and Buffalo County, depending on where that watershed lies. They are very large watersheds, so we get funding from different areas. But we can elect to get that funding, or elect not to get that funding, and then it'll go to other counties. With that money then, we then design and bid out and install those practices for reducing phosphorus, and we have to model that it does. So it's very similar, but we are the ones that actually receive the money from the point source discharger. It goes into an account, and then we then pay a rate of 70/30 or the 90/10 if it's economic hardship. So a little bit different, but kind of accomplishing the same thing as the water quality trading. So they're a little confusing. So if you have questions, and this is just a brief overview, there's like a 60-page document that goes way more in depth. Questions? I know that was a lot. Whose brain is spinning? Okay.
Yeah, I know we had asked Renee a few
Overview, now we do.
meetings past to do this, and whoever was involved, this is really good.
I will say with the MDV funds, the first year we got around 19,000. The second year was around 30-some thousand. And then last year it really jumped up with the 160-some thousand. So it varies depending on what the situation's gonna be. So we never really know how much it's gonna be until the report comes out.
Correct. And the county has the option to either take that funds or not. They just need to decide by the end of each year to receive it for the following. So. That's it for funding as far as now.
Thank you.
All of that was really helpful.
And I can, I know I gave you guys paper. I know I gave you guys paper copies, but I can go ahead and get that emailed out to you as well, so you have an electronic copy if you guys would like that. Okay.
We covered a lot of ground, but I think, was it the soil and water that some of our salaries are covered?
Yes.
Yes.
So Soil and Water has that staffing portion. So it's 100%, 70%, and 50% is what they're looked to try to cover. They have yet to cover the 50% for the third position. They're working towards it. So the state, they recognize that they are not fulfilling their needs when they have said that we'll cover 3 positions at those rates, but they are definitely trying. So that's all we can ask for at this point. We have about 1.5 positions, maybe 2 positions being covered at some points. I know we went down a little bit for this next year, which was disappointing, but it's still right around like 109 to like 130,000 is what we're getting for the staffing portion.
It's just, I just like to emphasize that our department, we get significant funding for staff positions, and that's really, really helpful.
And then a lot of these grants too offer, like trim, so we have engineering costs that we can get covered, and then I have everybody in the office, they have to do grant hours. So trim and land and water, I can return grant hours back to the state and say, this is how much we've spent, and each grant has a little bit extra for trying to fund back some of that back to the department. And then even our non-metallic mining, that's part of our ability to show how much we charge is valid, so.
That's not dollar for dollar, that'd be like 70% like the other grants, I assume, right, reimbursement, or is it?
No, that's more of, nope, sorry, yep, it is a 70%, yep. Or 90, depending on,
Which,
yep.
Okay. Nothing, you've got it covered? Yep. Any other questions? Okay, now we can maybe go to item 10 then.
11.
11, yes. Had my finger out on 10. Yep, 11. Okay, cost share, request discussion, possible action.
So that's me again.
That's you again, okay.
So rather than go through every single landowner on here, I'm going to point out the 3 different cost coverages because it's all for the same type of thing. These are all landowners who have just gone through the nutrient management farmer education class to either rewrite a full plan or to do an update. And in a single case for Chad Rosa, he did a update and some soil sampling. So you'll see 3 costs, $166.94, or anybody who has done just an update. $478.32 is somebody who's done a full plan. And then in the case of Chad Rosa, it is $362.94. That would be the soil sampling plus the $166.94 for the class stipend, because he just did an update. So all of those are the ones that just went through with Brad Sirianni. All have signed off and approved plans. So at this point, since their 590 plan is approved, we are now able to reimburse the class stipend, which is part of that $20,000 NMFE grant. You'll notice on here too that Thomas Marsalic is listed twice. He's towards the end. It was 2 different updates that he did, which is why he has the 2 different. Still the same amount of money, but 2 updated plans.
What is the total?
I think it's around 7,000, 7,500. So we still got some way to go yet. But this is Rick's first year working on it, and he hasn't been here the whole year, and he's learning the program. So this grant next year, I honestly think that he will probably knock out of the park, and we'll get to spend the $20,000. Not to put him on the spot, but Rick, I'm kind of hoping you're listening and counting on that, but.
So this is not all 590 participants here either, this is just the ones that took the class, did it on their own, some of us.
They did the class, because you don't have to go through the class to write your own plan. You can do your own plan if you want to do your own plan, but this one is a class to help you do your own plan.
Correct, because it is complicated. That's why I let the professionals do it.
I'll make a motion to approve the payment requests, if that's.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say. Carried. Get the lines in the right place here. County. Okay, on item 12, County Conservationist Operations Report and other things.
So my report will be pretty brief, but I do want to mention that a few weeks ago, Mike and I attended the Friends of Trempealeau Lakes meeting. They're a brand-new group that's trying to start down in Trempealeau. There's 5 lakes down there, the first, second, third Round Lake, and I believe the 5th one is unnamed. So at that meeting, we discussed the Trempealeau Lake stakeholder concerns related to the condition of the Trempealeau Lakes. Also discussed the near-term restoration efforts and long-term watershed improvement efforts. So in the short term, there are their main concern in the short term is that on Second Lake, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the lakes, but there is a handicap accessible fishing dock on that lake. And however, there's an invasive aquatic plant species called curly leaf pondweed. And just a little background on this weed. It is noxious, and it came from Eurasia. And what it does is it forms a very dense mat in the spring, so it's really hard to fish in the springtime. And then also it decreases like native aquatic wildlife habitat. And then it also outcompetes other native vegetation because it forms super thick mats. Then in the late summer, this plant will die off, which creates a large load of phosphorus comes off of these plants when they're dying. And once they're dead, they all kind of accumulate along the shoreline. So it's just basically a big mess when these plants are in your waterways. So in the short term, what this group wants to do is to remove those plants. So around that fishing dock for the handicap accessible fishing dock. And what we will provide as a county is currently I'm looking at different DNR aquatic invasive species grants, so we can supply or just have the money for this group to use to either harvest those plants or to use herbicide to kill them off. And because this is a really new group, they're still trying to form, so hopefully in the next few years too, we can look at different grants, maybe federal grants to do some dredging too. That way we can reduce all that sediment around that dock, and hopefully we can clear out the entire lake or do dredging where it's needed to make the beds deeper so the plants can't get sunlight, so it would discourage them from growing there in the first place. So that is what this group would like to do, is to receive a grant to start removing those plants. So hopefully, long-term, they might try to do this with other lakes too and try to remove other aquatic invasive plants or do dredging and other things too to increase recreation, since those lakes are very important for ice fishing and waterfowl hunters. It's a lot of people that come to the area. And so that is what the Friends of Trempealeau Lakes group, that is what they want to do. That's their mission. And so I am in contact with 2 DNR staff, so Sean Gibbon and Gina Keenan too, for grant assistance, and also to do some project planning, because one of the grants I'm looking at, it wants more so like project planning, so like the whole overview of what I just mentioned, and then also to divide out the budget too. So I'm going to work with the DNR folks and a biologist too to figure out exactly how much all this will cost, and hopefully get funding for it. So is there any questions with that?
Yeah, when you get rid of this plant,
yeah,
did it just come back the next year, or is there something they can do to, is that what you're talking about, dredging in the future?
Yep, exactly. So dredging would be a permanent solution to that, and just to remove all that sediment load, so then the plants will not have the sunlight to keep growing. But herbicide does work too, or maybe getting a harvester too to remove the plants mechanically. So, yeah, hopefully long-term it would be the dredging.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions? So next, I'll just briefly mention our cost share projects. So in 2022, we have 20 cost share projects. They're all in different phases of completion. And Haley rounded up all the numbers from previous years. So in 2021, we had 19 cost share projects. 2020, we had 20. 2019, we had 18. And 2018, we had 17. So we are sitting at about, we're still keeping at our average rate of doing these cost shares. So it's just good to see that, with the short staff and COVID, that we're still like on top of that. And my very last plug is, I know we already mentioned this, but I will be attending the Lake District Workshop at UW River Falls on September 26th. So that is what I'm going to be doing in the near future.
Okay. Any more questions? Comments? No? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
DLM Director of Operations up next.
I just want to let you guys know that we're working on the department newsletter that will go out to all property owners or in the county. We did that last year and got a big response. You asked earlier, how do people find out about these programs? Well, this is one of the ways. And so we're trying to be put more effort and energy into outreach, reaching citizens. This is one of those ways, and we're going to continue in the coming year to develop that email newsletter as well. So it'll be about 10, 12 pages long. So that should be going out probably sometime in October. So we're looking forward to that. And then lastly, want to put another plug out for the 50th anniversary celebration of Petrick Park on September 24th, 3 to 7 p.m. We'll have free food, some activities for kids, as well as conservation education, and live music from the Bruce Larson and the Rocky Mountain Band. So 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock on September 24th. So everyone should make an effort to get out. There'll be a formal program in the middle of that time period as well. So that's all I have.
Okay, any questions? Not. Any future agenda items need to be brought up, put up? Need to be, wanna be? Tony?
Railroad crossings, is there anything that we would need to investigate in Petrick Park? We're talking about investing a large sum of money possibly there.
We have either a license or we're grandfathered in with a license for that crossing.
Okay. Okay.
That's what we.
Because I have been asked by a couple people about that, because it is a railroad, it can be pulled anytime. No, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know what other options we would pursue on that.
It was brought up possibly purchasing property on the backside.
Backside meaning?
Coming off the River Road side and getting an easement from some adjoining landowners that way to secure a permanent.
Yeah, and that's addressed in the master plan.
Okay.
We would still need a bridge across the river.
Correct, which would not be an easy feat either, I assume.
Right. I think both those options have their own unique challenges. So I think in the coming years we'll be looking at those options. I think both of those help improve the situation for the park.
Anybody else with anything that may need to be discussed? Leave it up to you to fill the sheet.
Okay. We'll probably have something, I would think, possibly wildlife damage next time.
Okay. Yeah.
Since it'll be October.
It depends. It just depends on the budget and when they're going to get it out. Mostly, usually October, but sometimes it's had to be pushed into November.
Yeah. So that's coming up either one of the next 2 months.
Okay. Confirm the next meeting date, October 5th. Any issues with that day and date? Okay, if not, that will be the date. And with that, unless somebody has something else, I'll adjourn this meeting at 10:22.